take it out of that one and put it on that one.
Yeah. Because this one's waterproof. Hello everyone. So this video is a bit long, but I wanted to make a video about that will help people who are thinking about doing endurance, are interested in endurance, that are just a little intimidated or not sure, you know, what it entails and what to expect. So we brought two young horses that we started. Well, this guy Isidro started under saddle, and the other one was supposedly started in the prison program, one of the Mustang prison programs, but we did a restart on her. And so this is both of their first endurance ride. They are doing an LD, which is called limited distance, which is the very beginning endurance rides. They do have some intro rides, which are like 10, 12 miles generally. And then they have LDs like this one that are like 25, 30, sometimes 35 miles, before you get up to real endurance miles, which are 50, 75, and 100 miles. So we arrived at night and it was too late to vet in. So you have to vet your horse in and make sure that the vets check them out and they're okay to start. So we vetted him in the morning, and then now Isidro is on him about to start the ride. They give you a start time, and there's usually a meeting the night before that they talk about the ride, any issues, the start time. So the start time for this one, I believe, was 8 a.m., 7:30 or 8 a.m. So you can start the ride usually within sometime around that, but nobody gets to go on the trail until that time. And then they take down your number. There's usually a butt number, but because of the weather, you couldn't get a butt number. And so that way they know who left, so that and then you'll have different checkpoints, so that they are aware of, when the riders are, who's coming in, who's still out there, that sort of thing. It's like a safety thing. And so this is a great start. This horse is starting on a loose rein, at a walk. It's a controlled start. So the gal in the black coat up there, she is the leader. And then once they get out on the trail, you can pass people and go faster or slower, whatever you want to do. And so this is what we like. We like a nice controlled start. Sometimes it's pretty crazy at the start, especially if there's a big group of people that are starting. It can get pretty wild. So you might want to keep in mind, if it's your first time, to maybe, if it looks like there's a lot of people at the start, maybe wait till all those people leave and then start your horse later when it's calmer. And then also, one of the things that we do, especially with young horses or new horses to this, is we make sure that there's always a buddy horse. Either you go with somebody, you are stabled next to somebody who will be there. We like to bring 3 horses, that way no horse is left alone when another horse is out. We try and make sure that there's a buddy horse, a calm buddy horse, all the time because there's already so much for them to deal with, for them to have to deal with a buddy horse or being alone for the first time at night and stabling. That's a bit much. So the halfway point, the vet check was actually out on the trail for this limited distance ride. And so that's what we're doing right here is we're waiting. We drove out there because we have things like hay and electrolytes, water buckets, things for the rider to warm them up, a cooler for the horse because it's snowing, they're going to be wet, they're going to be cold. We have to keep the muscles warm. And so and here Citro is coming in at that halfway point, and they will get a full vet check, and it's a 1 hour hold, which means that you're going to stay there for an hour while your horse kind of cools down, making sure they're healthy. And you can see we have him covered here. Citro's walking him. What was happening because it was so cold is a lot of these horses were cramping up. You got to keep those muscles warm. Do what you need to do to keep your horse healthy and good. And we dosed him with electrolytes. We like to dose him with electrolytes the night before, the morning of, and then at that hold. Now he's headed back out for the last half of his ride, and this is him back at camp. They finished, and the vets will check you in right away. Got to make sure that they pulse down. The goal, they'll tell you what pulse they want him to be. Most of them are 60. They need to be at 60 beats per minute. And then he gets to go back, cool his horse off, and then he'll have to do a final vet check-in to make sure they're sound before they can get a completion. This horse happened to place top 10, even though that we weren't planning on it. So for experience, we decided to show him for best condition. They do a whole nother vet check. You get them all cleaned up, looking nice, and they should be feeling good, be eating. And then the vet does a thorough exam, trotting him back, trotting him out, trotting him back. The vet will tell you they want you to trot circles. This vet wanted him to trot circles and lunge him a little bit. And then they'll check their whole body and mucous membranes, turgor, like moisture, like make sure that they're hydrated, make sure they're sound, make sure they don't have any blemishes on them. Like say they, pulled a shoe or overreached and they have a blemish and they're bleeding or something like that. They don't want that. All those things get judged on. And then the rider and their tack also gets weighed, and that factors in the decision on who gets best condition. So there wasn't a chance that he was going to win that, not because he doesn't look great. He does look great. It's just more Citro came in 10th place, and so time is also a factor that's considered in best condition. But it was just a great experience for a young horse to have to go through this process and get poked and prodded by the vet, to be asked to do these things in this environment. And our whole purpose is to get this horse trained for the client. So, and the client asked us to take him to this ride. The client was there competing on another horse. He ended up winning best condition with his horse on the 50 mile. But it's just, any way we can get them more experience is great. And super important because it was cold is to keep them warm. It's different in the summertime. We're actually cooling them off. And I'll probably if we do an endurance ride this summer, I'll probably do another video on that, on different ways that we like to keep them cool. is Nevada. She is a, I believe she just turned 6-year-old Mustang from Eagle, Nevada. This is her first endurance ride, and she's pretty nervous. This is pretty typical for a young horse, but she did really good, and she vetted in great, so she's ready to go. And a little bit different. You could see the Arab that Isidro rode before. He's just a little bit of he's got a really good mind. He was less bothered by a lot of this than Nevada is, but she handled herself well. The start was great. And this was a much different start from yesterday. There's a lot more people, but thankfully they all seem to be starting pretty quiet. Sometimes horses are rearing and bolting and getting pretty crazy, but this group had some nice horses, and we didn't have to deal with the snowy weather, even though it was still really cool. And you can see she's actually doing really good being around all those other horses and walking out. So good stuff there. I know on the trail she got pretty spunky. Isidro had to do a lot of circling because she wanted to pretty much like canter in place. Understandable. And then she ended up settling down. So with the Mustangs, they tend to need a little more cool down time to pulse in compared to the Arabians. And so Isidro got off and loosens her girth and walks her in maybe the last half mile. And so this is her halfway point. This time it was back at camp. And so the vet's checking her pulse right now, making sure that her pulse is down and that she's recovering. They do a great job to make sure these horses can continue. And it was really nice for her because when we got this horse, you could not like touch her all over. You couldn't go near her back feet. She would kick you if you tried to touch her back feet. And for all these strangers to be like putting stethoscopes on her and listening to her. And I love how she trots off. She's super fresh still. She's got tons of energy. This horse, I mean, it's got so much endurance talent. And so they make sure they trot off so that they are sound. Indy had to do that too yesterday. I just didn't put it in the video. And so if they're lame, they get pulled. And then the vet will listen to them again after that trot because they should be within a certain range. So you want to make sure that they're not like breathing super fast, their heart's going super fast, because even that little trot out shouldn't make her heart rate and her respiratory rate go really high. If they do, that's telling us that metabolically something's not quite right. And they test everything on them, which is just awesome. So you can be reassured that way that your horses are, well monitored on these rides. They don't want them to continue if they're not healthy. And so, I mean, just for a stranger to be even touching her mouth, like you could not get anywhere near her mouth. She would strike, rear up before. So a stranger touching her mouth, I was so proud of her. Really, really happy with that and excited that she was handling all of this so well. And so, like I was saying with the buddy horse, if you can go on an endurance ride with somebody else, even better. It just, all those things to try and get your young horses or your horses that are new to this off to the best start. I think you need to think about that. Try not to introduce too many new things at once. And eventually you can, bring them and they can be stable by themselves. And, especially if you have a horse that's not too buddy sour. And then, so we're putting this, it's still cool. She's got a pretty good winter coat on her. And so we opted not to clip, and I'm glad we did because it was so cold. And so like a lot of times people do trace clips on them, and we opted not to do that. So putting this Rambo dry rug back on her to get her coat dry and to keep her muscles warm. And so here I am just kind of helping him. I think I grabbed some electrolytes. We're going to give her some electrolytes. Like I said, we electrolyte them night before, morning of, middle of the ride. If they need them at the end, we'll give it. These vets were awesome too, because what was happening where people were thinking not to electrolyte their horses because it was cold. Whereas in the heat, they sweat a lot and they need them. But what was happening is they still need them because they're still using that stuff up. And these horses were getting cramped up, even though it was cold. So even though it's cold, important electrolyte, that was awesome. Like, there's no way we could have given that to her before. We've been working on it and training it. Like, it's a training issue. So if you have a horse that you can't tube or something, you need to fix that because it's going to be a problem later if they get in trouble and we need to give him stuff orally. So the day before when we had to give it, Isidro had to tie her up with the halter that we used to not, to prevent pulling back. And he was able to give it then, even though we'd worked on it at home. Couldn't give her treats by hand. Been working on that. Now you can give her treats by hand. All these little things matter. Done a lot of work with desensitizing her body, where the vet's going to be touching her. Did a lot of counter conditioning work and positive reinforcement work to get her less tense about that. I mean, even to the point of, I would palpate around her rump and her anus, so that's I knew the vets were going to do that. So I desensitized her to that as well before this ride. All those things kind of matter. You want to make sure that your horse can be touched all over and not react, not kick, not do things like that. So he had his 1 hour hold. She didn't eat very much, didn't drink very much, which was a little concerning, but she still looks good. So now he's off after that 1 hour hold, and he's off on the second half of the ride. So they finished the ride here. This gal is checking her pulse because she needs to get below 60 before she can get a time in for finishing the ride. She ended up coming in 6th place. And just for experience, just like we did with the last horse, we went ahead and showed her best condition. Anytime we can get these young horses to have more hands on them, vets checking them, trotting, getting in that environment, it's all a training opportunity. It got a little excited, like horses were coming in, so her heart rate kept going up and then would come back down. It finally settled down. So it wasn't really that physically she was having an issue. She was just a little nervous with all the excitement. And that's something that will get better with time. And so what he's doing right now is just waiting for the official, okay, time in. Yeah, letting him know he wants to show for best condition. Went ahead and threw the Rambo rug on her to get her dried and keep her warm, keep her muscles warm. And we had to kind of clean her up afterward to get her washed down so she'll look good for showing for best condition. And then Isidro had to weigh in. Really handy if you are crewing for this is to have like a little wagon, throw your saddle in, because usually the vet in is a little bit further away than where your trailer is. And we just dry camp out there. People camp in their trailers, sometimes camp in tents. It's very laid back, easygoing, a lot of fun. You're basically camping with your horse and going on a trail ride, but in a competitive fashion. And so here they're just talking with the vet to see when they want the horse to come back. They have to do some trotting out and checking him over to get the completion on the ride. So just ask a lot of questions. You go to a ride, be like, hey, where should I be? What's up next? Everybody is super helpful. They'll say, hey, all right, we got a vet. We'll bring a vet over, get her all vetted in. You just kind of tell them, hey, I finished my ride. What do I do now? And they'll just guide you. I said, everyone is so helpful in the endurance community. In the background there in the bright green is another Mustang competitor, Andrea Maitland. She has awesome Mustangs that she does 100 miles on. So here he's got to come in and get his final vet in. So this vet's going to check her out, listen to her heart rate again, have her trot out, check her skin turgor, her mucous membranes. He's looking in her mouth right there. Check her gut sounds to make sure that her gut is moving. Is so important in endurance horses. You want them eating as much as possible through the whole ride, before the ride, after the ride, to keep their guts moving, as well as drinking. And that's where the electrolytes come in handy. It makes them drink. You have to be really careful with electrolytes. You put too many in there, and you start to have another problem if they're not drinking enough water. Here he's checking her, which is great for this horse, right? This Mustang that you couldn't touch anywhere. He's checking the tone of her body, as well as any soreness or tenderness, in her muscles. All that's really important. So when you're prepping your horse for this, make sure you can touch them all over like that. You can grab a little kitty stethoscope if you don't have one, and practice listening to them with a stethoscope, so it's not so scary. So super proud of this horse, because all this stuff was scary for her. You couldn't do any of this stuff with her, and her owner wants to endurance ride her, which she has crazy talent for. Obviously, she's not even tired. She did 25 miles here, and look at her just trot off like, oh yeah, totally fine. And she did this barefoot. We had some boots that fit her front. We didn't have any boots that fit her back. We knew this ride wasn't real rocky, so we kind of got away with it. She has amazing feet. But you can tell she's just a little sore on one, I think it's the right hind. I think she hit a rock wrong or something. Just barely anything you can see. And so, I mean, she vetted in still and completed. But especially if she turns, you can see it a little bit. It's just like I think she got a little stone bruise. So for her next ride, we'll have her outfitted with boots, because she just has such nice feet. I'd hate to put shoes on it. You can put shoes on. And like I said, I made sure that this ride, the terrain was something like she'd already been training on. So it wasn't real rocky, it wasn't real hard terrain. And so we're able to finish barefoot. But you do need hoof protection available at every endurance ride, even if you're not using it, to be able to use it if you needed it. So keep that in mind. So we're using Easy Boots on her. A lot of different brands of boots. Found that those seem to fit her feet pretty good. So we're going with that. And I would say just get some help from people to get boots that fit right and that fit your horse, because all their feet are different sizes. There's lots of help out there. There's lots of Facebook groups for endurance riders too to learn some things on. I'm hoping this video kind of gives you a general idea of what endurance ride looks like, kind of the things that you're required to do, what your horse needs to know how to do. And I like to go bitless just because they eat and drink more bitless. So a lot of times we'll get these horses where they can be ridden in a halter. These two young horses, he did ride in a snaffle. Just to, he wasn't sure what to expect from them. We prepare him as much as possible. Not sure what to, expect. But pretty sure, I'd bet good money both these horses will be able to be ridden bitless, no problem. Which is just really nice because, like I said, they can eat and drink so much easier without a bit in their mouth. And so she's all vetted in. And then right here, got her all cleaned up. She looks a little nicer. And he went ahead and showed for BC. So he came back after an hour. It's 1 hour. And then you come back and this vet will check him out all over again and compare him to all the other horses and her time in and all that stuff. And I mean, I just love how, she just did 25 miles, her first one. She is not tired. Super talented Mustang for endurance. And so excited to see what her future is with her owner. Her owner is going to keep her in training another month, and she's supposed to go to a ride in April in the mountains. So definitely we'll need foot protection for that. And maybe I can do a little video update on Nevada here on that ride. But yeah, there's the fact that he can even, she's resisting a little bit, but you could not touch this horse's mouth at all. She would rear up. And the fact that he can kind of get in there and start looking at her mouth, and she'll just get better and better. We're all so proud of her. The whole team has been working with this horse. Isidro, me, Naomi, we've all had our hands on this horse, working with her, getting her happy and content and knowing her job and relaxed and prepared for all of this. And we, really hope that her owner will realize her endurance dreams, and go to a lot of fun competitions and with this super, super talented horse. So thanks for watching and coming along. I hope that you learned something about endurance riding and that you might want to try it one day because it's a blast, let me tell you.
Love it.
So much fun.
Good, that's what's supposed to happen, right? Oh, thank you.